My daughter's scream wasn't normal. It was the kind that shatters a parent's soul. When I spun around, I froze. HOA Karen stood over my disabled little girl, a crackling taser pressed against her tiny chest as she convulsed on the pavement. My blood turned ice. Neighbors gasped, some filming, but no one stepped forward. Not one person moved, and Karen, she smiled. She actually smiled, as if hurting a defenseless child was some neighborhood rule she was proudly enforcing. My daughter's wheelchair had tipped, her hands trembling, her eyes begging for help. And right then, right in the middle of her screams, Karen sneered, "Maybe she'll learn to behave next time." What she didn't know, what she couldn't possibly imagine, is who I used to be. Because the moment she hurt my child, she didn't just break a rule, she awakened the military veteran she should have never crossed. Before I dive into what happened next, I need to ask you something important. Which city are you watching this from? Drop your city name in the comments. I love seeing how far these stories travel across the country. And hey, before we start, make sure to subscribe to the channel so you never miss stories like this. All right, deep breath. Let's begin. My name is Daniel Brooks. I'm a father, a husband, and something most people in my neighborhood don't know, a former military veteran. I served years overseas, trained to stay calm under pressure, trained to protect the vulnerable, especially those who can't protect themselves. But nothing, absolutely nothing, prepared me for the day a suburban neighborhood bully decided she had the right to touch my disabled daughter. My daughter, Lily, is 9 years old. She was born with a neurological condition that affects her mobility. She's the bravest kid you'll ever meet, always smiling, always trying, always believing people are good, even when they aren't. She loves drawing butterflies, watching sunsets, and riding her wheelchair around the cul-de-sac while waving to neighbors who barely wave back. And then there's Karen, the self-appointed queen of the HOA, the kind of woman who believes rules matter more than people, more than decency, more than humanity. She's complained about my lawn height, my trash bins, the color of my front door, even the noise of Lily's wheelchair on the sidewalk. But that day, those petty complaints turned into something far darker, something cruel, something unforgivable. Because when Karen saw my daughter outside, without me standing right beside her, she decided to teach my little girl a lesson. What she didn't know was that hurting my daughter wouldn't just spark anger. It would awaken every instinct I trained for. And I was about to use all of them. It was a warm Saturday morning, the kind where the sun feels gentle and the whole street smells like fresh-cut grass, and Lily begged me to let her ride her wheelchair outside just for 5 minutes. She loved mornings like this, birds chirping, neighbors washing cars, kids practicing basketball in their driveways. I stood on the porch with a cup of coffee, watching her roll down the sidewalk with that huge butterfly sticker on the back of her chair shimmering in the sunlight. She laughed at her own speed, proud she was getting better at maneuvering tight turns. I kept my eyes on her, but I wasn't hovering. I wanted her to feel free, to feel normal. That was always the biggest challenge, giving her independence without feeding my own constant fear. She was turning around near the mailbox when I saw a familiar figure walking down the street, like she owned it. Karen, arms crossed, eyebrows pinched, chin lifted, her entire posture radiating authority she did not have. For a moment, all I felt was annoyance. Maybe she'd complain about some imaginary violation again. Maybe she'd lecture me about parking too close to the curb. I didn't expect anything more than her usual bitterness. But there was something different about her today, something sharp in her eyes, like she woke up angry and was searching for a target. She slowed when she spotted Lily, and I could actually see it in real time, her expression shift from irritation to disgust. She hated that my daughter existed outside her perfect little HOA bubble. She hated the noise of the wheelchair. She hated the sight of Lily smiling. And above everything, she hated the fact that a disabled child was living in her neighborhood. I started walking down the steps, not rushing, just moving closer in case she tried something. But before I could take more than 3 steps, Karen marched straight toward my daughter. "You're not allowed to be out here unsupervised," she snapped, her voice slicing through the peaceful morning. Lily froze, her tiny hands clutching the armrests, eyes wide and confused. "My dad is right there," she whispered, her voice trembling as she pointed toward me. Karen didn't even glance in my direction. "Sidewalk rules are sidewalk rules," she barked. "Wheelchairs make too much noise. You're disturbing people." I felt my jaw clench so tight it hurt. "Karen," I called out, already speeding up. "She's fine. Leave her alone." But she acted like she couldn't hear me. Instead, she leaned down, grabbed the handles of Lily's wheelchair, and yanked it backward so hard the chair jerked. Lily gasped and her head snapped back from the sudden force. I broke into a run. "Karen, stop!" I shouted. She ignored me. Lily tried to steady herself, her breath coming fast. "Please don't. Please stop. I didn't do anything wrong. You people never follow the rules," Karen muttered through clenched teeth. "Maybe this will make you behave." And then, before my brain could fully process it, Karen reached into her purse and pulled out a bright yellow taser, one of those cheap civilian ones she bragged about buying for her protection. She clicked the trigger once, letting the electric crackle fill the air. My heart stopped. "Karen!" I roared so loudly my throat burned. Lily began to cry, her whole body trembling. She tried to turn her chair away, but Karen stepped in front of her, blocking her path. And then she pressed the taser against the metal armrest too close to my daughter's chest and fired. The sound was horrifying. A sharp pop, a violent crackle, and then a scream. My daughter's scream ripped through the quiet neighborhood and traveled straight through every bone in my body. Lily convulsed violently, her entire body seizing as electricity surged through her. The wheelchair tipped sideways, crashing onto the pavement. Karen stepped back only because the chair fell, not because she regretted anything. She watched Lily shake on the ground, and instead of helping, instead of panicking, instead of acting like a human being, she had the audacity to smirk. A smirk, a sick, twisted little smile, like she'd accomplished something righteous. I don't remember dropping my coffee. I don't remember jumping off the last 2 steps. I don't even remember what I screamed. Everything became blurry except for one thing. My daughter lying on the ground, crying, shaking, gasping for breath, her tiny fingers clawing at the air as she tried to reach me. Neighbors came outside, some with phones already recording, others too shocked to move. Nobody intervened. Nobody helped. They just watched. That was the kind of neighborhood Karen had built. People too afraid of her, too intimidated by her, too trained to avoid conflict, to do the right thing. By the time I reached them, Karen had stepped back with her arms crossed like she was the victim. "Maybe now she'll learn not to roll around everywhere," she muttered coldly. I dropped to my knees beside Lily, gently lifting her into my arms while she sobbed into my chest. Her breathing was uneven, her body limp, her heartbeat racing like a trapped bird. "I'm here, baby," I whispered, trying to steady my own shaking hands. "I'm here. I've got you." I brushed her hair out of her face, checked her pulse, checked her pupils, old instincts kicking in automatically. "She assaulted a minor," someone shouted from across the street. "Call the police," another neighbor yelled, but I was no longer listening to anyone except the small, broken voice in my arms whispering, "Daddy, it hurts. Daddy, make it stop." I looked up at Karen. For the first time that morning, she looked nervous. Not guilty, just nervous, like she realized she may have gone a little too far. "You shouldn't have let her wander," she muttered, trying to justify herself. "It's a safety issue." I didn't mean. I stood up slowly, still holding Lily, my eyes locked on hers. And in that moment, something inside me shifted. Something old, something trained, something controlled. Every instinct I had buried from my military years rose to the surface, not for war, not for violence, but for protection. This woman hurt my child, and I wasn't going to let the system bury this like another neighborhood misunderstanding. Not this time. Not when my daughter was the one who paid the price. Karen took a step back when she saw my face. Because finally, she realized the truth she should have known from the very start. She had just attacked the daughter of a military veteran. And veterans don't break. They respond. And I was about to. As I carried Lily into the house, her small fingers clutching my shirt like she was scared I'd disappear if she let go, the entire neighborhood watched in a strange, suffocating silence, like they were witnessing a car crash they didn't want to be blamed for. My daughter's breathing was still uneven, her chest rising in quick, panicked bursts that made every protective instinct inside me burn hotter. I laid her gently on the living room couch, immediately checking her vitals again. Pulse fast, but steady, pupils reactive, muscle spasms reducing. Still, she winced whenever she tried to move. "Daddy, I'm scared," she whispered, her voice barely audible. I swallowed hard, calming my tone even though fire was roaring inside me. "You're safe now. I'm right here, okay? I won't let anyone hurt you again." But inside, I wasn't calm. Not even close. I stepped away for a second to grab a cold compress, and when I caught my reflection in the hallway mirror, I barely recognized myself. The clenched jaw, the trembling hands, the rage simmering just beneath the surface. I wasn't reacting like a neighbor or a father in some peaceful suburb. I was reacting like someone trained to respond under threat. Someone who had seen cruelty firsthand. Someone who learned to stay controlled until the exact second control wasn't needed anymore. After tending to Lily, I stepped outside because I needed answers and I needed them now. The moment I walked out, the crowd scattered like pigeons startled by sudden movement. Phones disappeared into pockets. Conversations evaporated. Neighbors who had known us for years avoided my eyes like they were guilty of something, and maybe they weren't guilty of hurting my daughter directly, but their silence, their hesitation, their refusal to stop Karen, that made them part of the problem. Karen herself was still standing near the sidewalk, her arms folded, her posture stiff, like she was trying to pretend she wasn't shaking. The taser was still in her hand. She hid it the moment she saw me stepping toward her. "This is all being blown out of proportion," she said quickly, her voice already defensive. She startled me. I acted on instinct. I stopped just a few feet away, close enough for her to feel the weight of every word I said. "You tossed a disabled child, Karen. You didn't act on instinct. You acted on your hatred." Her nostrils flared. I didn't know she was disabled," she lied. "Everyone in this community knew Lily. Everyone knew her condition. Everyone had seen her riding her wheelchair around the block since she was 4. "You knew," I said coldly. "And you still chose violence." Some neighbors peeked through blinds. Others stood on their lawns pretending to water plants or pick up imaginary debris. Anything to avoid being implicated. "I'll call the HOA board," Karen snapped, voice cracking slightly. "I'll tell them your daughter was causing a disturbance. And you're threatening me." Her attempt to twist the narrative didn't surprise me. People like Karen always believed they could manipulate the system. But what shocked her was my reaction. I didn't yell. I didn't step closer. I didn't lose control. I simply said, "Go ahead. Call whoever you want. I'll be calling the police. And I'll be filing charges." Her face drained of color. She wasn't expecting that. She wasn't expecting consequences. She wasn't expecting the quiet, firm tone of someone who had spent years briefing officers, giving commands, and making split-second decisions under life-or-death pressure. "You can't prove anything," she whispered. "There's no video. There are at least 10 neighbors who recorded it. I cut in, and whether they hand those videos over willingly or through subpoenas doesn't matter to me. I'm getting justice for my daughter." The word justice made her flinch. Not because she felt guilt, because she felt fear. And that fear spread across the neighborhood like wildfire. I could feel it in the air. People were realizing this wasn't going to disappear by evening. This wasn't going to be resolved with a petty HOA fine or a passive-aggressive email chain. This was serious, and they knew it. I walked back inside, shutting the door behind me with a heavy thud that echoed the weight of everything that had just happened. Lily was curled on the couch, hugging her stuffed butterfly pillow, the one she always held when she was scared. "Daddy, am I in trouble?" That question broke me in a way nothing in the military ever did. I knelt beside her, brushing her cheek gently. "You didn't do anything wrong. Someone else did something terrible, and I'm going to fix it. I promise. She nodded slowly, tears slipping down her temples. Will she come back? The thought sent a pulse of anger through me, but I kept my voice calm. Not if I have anything to say about it. Just then, a soft knock came at the door. For a second, I tensed, old instincts rising. But when I opened it, I saw Mrs. Thompson, an elderly neighbor who had always been kind to Lily, standing with shaking hands. I saw everything, she whispered. I don't like conflict, but this crossed every line. If you need my testimony, I'll give it. My shoulders eased slightly. Thank you. And Daniel, she hesitated, glancing around nervously. Karen has always been unhinged. But today she wasn't just angry. She looked dangerous. I already knew that, but hearing someone else say it made the situation feel heavier. I think she targeted Lily, Mrs. Thompson added softly. Not because of rules, because she wanted control. I felt something icy settle in my chest. Thank you for telling me. She left quickly, not wanting to be seen supporting me. I shut the door and leaned against it for a moment, my mind racing. This wasn't just a random outburst. This was an escalation. Karen had crossed a line she could never uncross. And now the entire neighborhood had to decide whose side they were on. Spoiler, they weren't brave enough to pick a side. Not yet. But they would be forced to soon, because justice wasn't going to wait for their comfort. And neither was I. The hours after the attack felt like living inside a pressure cooker, silent, tense, and ready to explode at any moment. While Lily rested on the couch, drifting in and out of sleep, I sat on the edge of the coffee table watching over her, every twitch of her fingers sending a fresh stab of guilt and fury through my chest. I kept replaying the moment she screamed, the way her body jerked from the shock, the way Karen stood there smirking like she had done something noble. Each replay made me more certain this wasn't an accident. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was cruelty, and the neighborhood's response, or lack of response, only made it worse. Word spread quickly. Suburban communities were faster than the internet when it came to gossip, and by noon, the entire HOA knew what happened. But instead of rushing to support us, neighbors turned awkward, skittish, like they didn't know which direction the wind was blowing yet. Some avoided walking past our house altogether. Others lingered outside on their lawns, whispering urgently, casting nervous glances toward our windows. A few, like Mrs. Thompson, showed genuine concern. But most, they acted like neutrality made them innocent, as if staying silent erased their complicity. I didn't blame them for being scared. Karen had a way of controlling people, not because she was powerful, but because she was relentless. People feared being targeted by her petty complaints, threatened by her HOA fines, dragged into drama they didn't want. But the problem with living under a bully is simple. The more you avoid conflict, the stronger the bully becomes. Around 2 p.m., there was another knock at the door, more hesitant this time. When I opened it, I found Mr. and Mrs. Patel, a quiet couple who lived 3 houses down. They stood close together, as if trying to shield each other from possible backlash. Daniel, we just heard, Mr. Patel said softly. We didn't see it ourselves, but our security camera might have caught part of the incident. My breath caught. You recorded it? Not deliberately, he said, quickly. Our doorbell camera faces the walkway. It might have the audio, maybe even the moment she approached your daughter. That was huge. Evidence, real, time-stamped evidence. If you're willing to share it, I said, it could make a massive difference. They exchanged a worried look. Mrs. Patel lowered her voice. We want to help. But Karen, she'll make our lives a nightmare if she finds out. I didn't want them to be terrified of her, but I understood. I'll handle Karen, I said firmly. Your job is just to protect yourselves and your family. If you give me the footage, I'll make sure your names never come up. After a long moment, they nodded. We'll bring it over tonight, Mr. Patel whispered. Thank you, I said. They left quickly, like spies returning to their base. Minutes later, my phone buzzed. It was a notification from the neighborhood Facebook group, rarely used except for passive-aggressive posts about trash collection or missing cats. But this time, it had blown up. I clicked the notification. A massive thread had formed around someone's vague post. Something serious happened on Brookwood Lane today. Anyone know the details? Comments were flooding in, some expressing shock, others speculating, a few trying to defend Karen. She wouldn't hurt a child. Maybe the kid provoked her. People exaggerate everything these days. My blood boiled reading those. I typed nothing. I wasn't about to argue with strangers hiding behind profile pictures of roses and Labradors. Let them talk. Let them guess. The truth was coming, and it was undeniable. As I set my phone down, another knock sounded, this one louder, firmer, like the person outside wasn't afraid to be seen. I opened the door and found Mark, a neighbor I barely interacted with. He had a baseball cap on backward, grease stains on his hands from working on his truck, and a grim expression. "Hey," he muttered, "I saw everything." My stomach tightened. "You recorded it?" "Yeah," he said, rubbing the back of his neck. "Look, man, I don't like getting involved in drama. But this wasn't drama. This was messed up. I got the whole thing, from her yelling at your kid to the moment she tossed her." My heart kicked hard against my ribs. "Mark, I know," he cut in. "But she's going to come after me if she finds out. You know how she is." "Your video could be the difference between justice and her walking away free," I said quietly. "I won't let her retaliate against you. I promise." He took a deep breath, then nodded. "I'll upload it to a private drive and send it to you." That made 2 pieces of evidence. 2 neighbors brave enough to stand up. Maybe people weren't as cowardly as I thought. Maybe they just needed someone to stand first. "Thank you," I said sincerely. "It means more than you know." He hesitated. "Give her hell for what she did." "I intend to," I replied. Once he left, I returned to Lily's side. She was awake now, her eyes glassy but clearer. I sat down beside her. "How do you feel?" She shrugged weakly. "My chest hurts, but I'm okay." She wasn't okay, but she wanted to be strong for me. That was the kind of kid she was. "Daddy," she whispered, "why did she do it?" That question sliced straight into the rawest part of me. "Because some people are cruel," I said gently. "But we're going to make sure she never does this again." A small tear slipped down her cheek. I wiped it away. "And you're safe," I added. "I'm here. I won't let anything happen to you." As she leaned against me, I realized something important. The neighborhood wasn't staying silent because they didn't care. They were staying silent because they didn't know what would happen next. They were waiting to see if this would blow over or ignite. They were waiting to see how far I would go. And they weren't going to wait much longer. Because tonight, when I contacted the police, the entire community would be forced to choose a side. And this time, silence wouldn't protect them. It would expose them. That evening, just as the sun dipped behind the rooftops and cast long orange shadows across the street, I made the call I had been preparing for all day. My hands didn't shake. My voice didn't crack. Training had carved calmness in my bones. And now that calmness returned like an old, familiar weapon. The dispatcher answered, and the moment I said the words, "My disabled daughter was assaulted with a taser by an HOA officer," everything changed. They didn't treat it like a neighborhood argument. They treated it like a crime. Within 15 minutes, a patrol car pulled up quietly outside my house. I could see worried faces peeking from behind blinds as 2 officers stepped out, their expressions serious. One was a young woman with sharp eyes, the other a graying man with a heavy posture that told me he had seen every kind of trouble suburbia could hide. I met them on the porch. "I'm Officer Ramirez," the woman said. "This is Officer Turner. We're here for the report." I nodded slowly. "You're going to want to hear everything," I said, my voice steady but cold. They followed me inside, where Lily sat curled on the couch with a blanket, her breathing still shallow. The moment Ramirez saw the red marks on her small chest, the tremor still running through her body, her eyes hardened. "Sweetheart," she said gently, kneeling beside her, "we're going to help you, okay?" Lily nodded, but her voice was barely a whisper when she said, "I'm scared." "You don't have to be," Ramirez assured her softly. "You're safe now." Turner turned to me. "Tell us what happened." So I did. I explained Everything from Karen approaching Lily to yanking the wheelchair to pulling out her taser and firing it without hesitation. Ramirez's eyebrows shot up at the mention of the taser. She used a weapon on a child? My disabled child, I added firmly. Turner scribbled quickly in his notepad. Did you witness the incident yourself? Yes, I said, and there are recordings. Multiple neighbors caught parts of it on video. Ramirez looked at me sharply. Can we have access to those? I already asked them. They'll send them to me tonight. I can forward them to you. I could feel something shift in the room. Not anger, something colder. Something procedural. Something dangerous for Karen. Ramirez stood and straightened her uniform. This isn't an HOA matter, she said firmly. This is felony assault. Turner nodded grimly, especially on a vulnerable minor. Hearing it labeled that way made my chest tighten. It wasn't that I didn't know the gravity, I did, but hearing law enforcement confirm it hit differently. Lily looked up suddenly, fear flickering in her eyes. Daddy, is she going to come back? Ramirez knelt again, her tone serious but gentle. Sweetheart, we're going to make sure she doesn't come anywhere near you again. She turned to me. We'll open the investigation immediately. I exhaled a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. But peace didn't last long, because as the officers stepped back outside to inspect the area where the attack happened, Karen was already storming toward them from across the street. Her hair was messy, her face flushed, and her eyes wild with a fiery blend of fear and arrogance. "Excuse me," she screeched, marching right up to Ramirez. "That man is lying. His daughter was rolling around the sidewalks and nearly hit me, and I acted in self-defense." Turner lifted a hand calmly. "Ma'am, step back." "No," she snapped. "I'm the HOA president, and I demand you arrest him for making false accusations." Ramirez stared at her with a look I recognized instantly, the look of a woman who had absolutely zero tolerance for nonsense. "Ma'am, we've received a report that you used a taser on a minor." "A minor who was out of control," Karen shouted. "A minor who refuses to follow community rules." I stepped onto the porch. She turned her fury toward me instantly. "You're exaggerating everything. You're trying to make me look like a monster." "You tossed my child," I said, my voice dangerously calm. "No amount of yelling is going to change that." Her mouth opened and closed like she wanted to say something but couldn't find the words. Then she pointed at my daughter through the window. She was faking it. The officers froze. Turner slowly lowered his notepad. Ramirez looked like she might slap her. Instead, she stepped closer, lowering her voice to a chilling quiet. "Ma'am, you're on very thin ice, and if you continue to obstruct this investigation, you may be arrested tonight." Karen's face twisted into something almost unhuman. Panic mixed with rage, terror mixed with spite. "This neighborhood will back me," she hissed, her voice cracking. That's when something incredible happened. For the first time since the attack, neighbors came outside, not to hide but to speak. Mrs. Thompson walked toward us with trembling hands. "Officer," she said. "I saw her do it." Behind her, Mark stepped out holding his phone. "I recorded the whole thing," he said. "Everything." The Patels joined next, their faces pale but determined. "We have audio," they said together. One by one, hesitant at first, but growing bolder, neighbors gathered and formed a small crowd behind the officers. Karen's face drained of all color. She was alone, utterly alone. Ramirez stepped forward. "Ma'am, please turn around." "What?" Karen stammered. No, you don't understand. Turn around," Ramirez repeated. "Now." Karen shook her head wildly. "You can't do this. I'm the HOA president. I make the rules." Turner spoke quietly. "The law makes the rules." And then, with the entire neighborhood watching, Ramirez pulled out her handcuffs and began reading Karen her rights. "You are under arrest for assault on a minor, assault with a weapon, and endangerment of a disabled child." Karen shrieked, actually shrieked, as Turner placed a hand on her shoulder to steady her. "This is harassment. This is enough, Karen," Ramirez said sharply. "You're done." The officers guided her toward the patrol car as she kicked, screamed, and spewed every excuse she could think of. But no one helped her. No one defended her. No one looked at her with anything other than disgust. For the first time since she moved into this neighborhood, Karen had no power. And for the first time since the attack, I felt something close to hope. The night after Karen's arrest should have felt like victory, like a long-awaited breath of relief finally released. But instead, an eerie heaviness settled over the neighborhood as if the street itself was holding its breath. Lily had finally fallen asleep in my arms, exhausted from fear and pain, and I sat beside her, staring at the soft rise and fall of her chest. The house was quiet except for the faint hum of the air conditioner, but my mind refused to rest. Something about Karen's meltdown, something about the way she screamed, "I'm the HOA president. I make the rules," echoed inside my skull like a warning. People like Karen didn't collapse instantly. People like Karen didn't snap without reason. They cracked when the ground beneath them had already been shaking for a long time, and I needed to know why. My questions were answered far sooner and more violently than I expected. Around 10 p.m., my phone buzzed. It was Mark. "Hey, man," he whispered, urgently. "You outside?" "No," I said quietly, careful not to wake Lily. "What's wrong?" "Some HOA board members just pulled up to Karen's house. 3 of them. They look pissed and stressed and scared." Scared. That told me everything. "I'm coming outside," I said. I tucked Lily in, kissed her forehead, and stepped out onto the porch. The street was dimly lit, the dust-colored sky now fully claimed by darkness. I saw the 3 HOA board members, stiff suits, tight faces, standing near Karen's driveway, arguing in hushed tones. Mark, hiding behind his truck, signaled me over. "Listen," he whispered. "I overheard them. You won't believe this." "Try me." Karen was supposed to cover something up. My jaw tightened. Cover up what? Mark glanced toward the board members. Apparently, she's been hiding complaints, big ones. Safety violations, harassment allegations, forged signatures, misused HOA funds, all kinds of crap. That made sense, but it didn't explain everything. Why would she tase a child? Mark swallowed. Because she thought you were investigating her. I blinked. What? They think she targeted your daughter because she thought you were collecting evidence. She thought you were going to expose her. No, that didn't line up. Karen never cared about nuance or subtlety. She reacted to whatever power she felt she had. But the more I thought about her behavior that morning, the rage, the fear, the desperation, the more everything clicked into place like a puzzle turning itself upright. She didn't attack Lily out of random hatred. She attacked her because she believed something far darker. She believed hurting Lily would send a message, a threat, a warning. And then the chilling truth landed like a stone in my gut. She thought hurting my child would scare me into backing off. I murmured. Mark's silence answered for him. A slow burn spread beneath my skin. Not only had Karen committed a monstrous act, she did it for leverage. Lily wasn't a victim of impulsive cruelty. She was a victim of calculated intimidation. I took a step toward the HOA board members. They stiffened the moment they saw me approaching. "Mr. Brooks," one of them said, adjusting his tie nervously, "we're terribly sorry about what happened. Save it." I cut in. Why was Karen so desperate? Why did she think hurting a child would stop me from digging? They exchanged worried glances. The oldest man cleared his throat. "Look, this doesn't concern you." It concerned me the moment she put a taser against my daughter. I snapped, my voice cold enough to sicken them. The woman in the center, tight bun, pressed blazer, sighed heavily. Karen was involved in ongoing disciplinary issues within HOA. She was under investigation. For what? She hesitated. Misuse of HOA funds, falsifying violations, harassment, and involvement in an illegal security contract. Illegal? I echoed. She nodded. Karen hired unlicensed private security to patrol the neighborhood. They were supposed to intimidate residents who didn't follow her standards. It wasn't authorized. It wasn't approved. My stomach twisted. Was she working alone? The three exchanged the kind of look that meant no, but none of them wanted to say it. The truth was right there. Karen wasn't the root. She was the mask. Who is she covering for? I demanded. Silence. Then the youngest board member spoke, voice shaking. Our former HOA president. He resigned 2 months ago after allegations, but he still controls things from behind the scenes. I stepped closer until they all took a collective step back. So, Karen thought I was investigating him? We believe so, the woman whispered. She assumed your military background meant you'd uncover the entire operation. So that was it. Karen wasn't just cruel, she was terrified. Terrified of losing power. Terrified of exposing her former boss. And terrified that someone trained to spot corruption, was watching her too closely. She hurt my daughter because she was scared of me, I said, voice low and dangerous. The board members didn't deny it. We're sorry, the oldest man whispered, but please don't drag the HOA into a lawsuit. We're trying to reform. I stared at them, the weight of everything they'd allowed, the silence, the complicity, the cowardice, pressing down on my chest like a concrete block. They tried to fix the mess only when forced. They tried to act innocent only when cornered. But they weren't innocent. They gave Karen power. They let her abuse it. They let her terrorize the entire neighborhood. If anyone besides Karen bore guilt, it was them. You want reform? I said quietly. Then, tomorrow morning, every resident gets an email from the HOA acknowledging what she did. No excuses. No softening the truth. And no hiding behind ongoing investigations. And you will publicly support charges? Am I clear? They exchanged looks again, but this time none argued. Yes, the woman finally said. We'll do it. Good. I turned to leave, because if you don't, the next person I expose won't be Karen. Their faces went pale. Back inside the house, Lily stirred softly. I knelt beside her, brushing her hair, realizing the truth. The attack wasn't random. The neighborhood wasn't innocent. And justice, real justice, was going to require one final step. A step only I could take. The next morning began with the kind of silence that didn't feel peaceful. It felt like the world was bracing itself. I barely slept, drifting in and out while keeping one hand on Lily's blanket as if holding her would keep the nightmares away. When her eyes finally opened, soft and frightened, but a little steadier than yesterday, I forced a smile I didn't entirely feel. Good morning, sweetheart, I whispered. She nodded weakly. Did she go to jail? That simple question, asked with the innocence only a child could have, nearly shattered me. Yes, I said gently, brushing a stray curl behind her ear. She can't hurt you anymore. But even as the words left my lips, something in my chest tightened. Because deep down I knew the fight wasn't over. Not even close. After making Lily breakfast and settling her on the couch with her favorite stuffed butterfly and a cartoon playing quietly, I stepped outside. The neighborhood looked different, brighter in some ways, darker in others. People walked slower, watched each other more carefully, whispered less. The illusion of safety had cracked wide open last night, and everyone was feeling the weight of it. My phone buzzed. It was an email notification from the HOA. Subject: official statement regarding incident on Brookwood Lane. They did it. They actually did it. I opened it and scanned the announcement. Formal apologetic acknowledging the assault, misuse of authority, confirmed evidence, and full cooperation with law enforcement. They even encouraged residents to testify if needed. Good. It wouldn't erase their cowardice, but it was a start. I forwarded the email to Officer Ramirez with a note. Here's what you asked for. Moments later, she replied, We've received all video evidence. Case is moving forward. Strong charges. We'll update you. Strong charges. Those two words rippled something cold and satisfying through my veins. Karen wasn't walking out with a slap on the wrist. She wasn't filing a counter-complaint. She wasn't intimidating witnesses. She was done. But as the hours passed, the neighborhood grew tense again, like everyone sensed another wave coming. And it did. Around midday, a black SUV rolled slowly down the street, police plates, tinted windows. It stopped at Karen's house. 2 detectives stepped out. They weren't here for her. She was already in custody. They were here for evidence, and more importantly, they were here for the former HOA president. Within minutes, they emerged with boxes of files, computers, binders, paper trails Karen thought she'd hidden behind fake signatures and intimidation tactics. The neighborhood watched from their windows as the corruption finally saw sunlight. For the first time, Mrs. Thompson approached me nervously. "Is it true?" she whispered. "Is the board involved?" "Some of them," I said quietly, "but they're helping now." She nodded shakily. "That poor child of yours. I'm so glad she's safe." I offered a small smile, but my attention snapped back to the street when a familiar figure appeared, Mr. Gaines, the former HOA president. Gray hair, stiff posture, and an expression like he'd swallowed poison. He stepped out of his house slowly as detectives approached him. He didn't resist. He didn't argue. He didn't even ask why. He just lowered his head like a man who knew this moment was coming for a long time. They cuffed him right there on the street, in full view of every resident, while someone whispered good riddance from behind a curtain. For the first time in years, the neighborhood looked relieved. Karen and her shadow boss were gone. The fear that held people hostage finally snapped. But justice wasn't complete until I faced her. Not as her victim. Not as the man whose daughter she hurt. But as the veteran she underestimated. That evening Ramirez called. "Mr. Brooks," she said, "Karen wants to speak with you." Totally optional. Zero pressure. I didn't answer immediately. Part of me didn't want to see her face ever again. The other part, the trained, disciplined part, knew closure sometimes demands confrontation. "I'll come," I finally said. The station was quiet when I walked in, shoulders squared, heart steady. Ramirez guided me to an observation window where Karen sat cuffed to a metal table, eyes swollen from crying. Not for my daughter, but for herself. She looked smaller, weaker, like a balloon finally deflated. "You can talk to her through the speaker," Ramirez said. "Whenever you're ready." I pressed the button. "Karen." Her head jerked up. The guilt on her face wasn't real, it was fear. Fear of consequences. Fear of losing everything she thought she controlled. "I didn't mean to," she began. "Stop." My voice cut through the room like a blade. "Don't lie." She swallowed. She scared me. The wheelchair came too close. "You walked up to her," I said flatly. "You grabbed her chair. You pulled out a taser. You pointed it at a child." "I was under pressure," she tried again. "I thought you targeted my daughter because you lost control of your life," I said coldly. "Because you were terrified of being exposed." Tears filled her eyes. I didn't feel sympathy. Not even a little. "You didn't break my daughter," I said. "You didn't break me." I leaned closer to the speaker. "And after today, you will never hurt another child again." She sobbed, shaking her head. "Please, please don't ruin my life." "You did that yourself," I said quietly. I turned to leave. Ramirez placed a hand on my shoulder. "For what it's worth," she said softly, "you handled this with more restraint than most." I nodded, but my thoughts were already back home. When I walked through the door, Lily was awake, sketching butterflies in her notebook. When she saw me, she smiled, a small, fragile smile, but real. "Daddy," she said, "did you make sure she won't come back?" I knelt beside her, my chest swelling with emotion I couldn't hide. "Yes," I said, brushing her hair gently. "She's gone, and she won't ever hurt you again." Lily wrapped her arms around my neck, her tiny voice muffled against my shoulder as she whispered, "You're my hero." But the truth was simple. She was mine, and I vowed, right then, right there, that no matter what storm life brought next, I would always be her shield, her strength, her justice, her father. If you're still here after this emotional journey, I want to speak to you directly. Stories like this aren't just entertainment. They're reminders that real people face real battles every single day. And if Lily's strength or a father's fight for justice touched your heart even a little, then I need you to do one thing right now. Backhand index pointing right, drop your city in the comments. Let us know where you're watching from. Backhand index pointing right, hit the like button to push this story to more people who need to hear it. Backhand index pointing right. And most importantly, subscribe to the channel so you never miss the next powerful story we share. Your support helps this channel grow. It helps us tell harder stories, and it makes sure voices like Lily's are never ignored. Thank you for watching. Thank you for caring. And thank you for being part of this community. See you in the next story. Stay safe, stay kind, and stay strong.